Bruh, you surprised me a few days ago. You told me that you wanted to talk to me about black crackers. We haven't had a chance to really have that conversation, but it's been running around in my head. Now, are you really fooling me?
No, I'm not.
You're not fooling.
I'm not.
There's such a thing as black crackers.
Let's start with what a cracker is.
Okay, let's
And we're not talking about the kind you eat. In Florida history, the word cracker comes really from England. Shakespeare used it. It meant someone who's cracking jokes. Shakespeare would say, "Who is this cracker?" That's in one of his plays. Who is this cracker here?
Okay.
So it means someone who jokes and cracks, and acts silly.
Okay.
So that term was sort of given to the backwoods white people who came down into Florida. They were crackers but the word has evolved to a second meaning in Florida. A second meaning, and that is these in Florida. Florida has next to Texas the largest number of cattle. The largest number of cattle in any state other than Texas exists in Florida.
Okay.
Where do they come from? Where are all these cows coming from in Florida? The Spanish brought them in. And a lot of these animals went wild because they didn't have fences.
After the Spanish left, they were just left.
Even while they were here. But these animals just went wild. So you ended up with thousands and thousands of, they call them scrub cows.
Okay.
They're a little bit smaller than the cows you see in Texas. But there were many, many, many of them roaming through Florida. And cowboys started rounding them up and taking them to Tampa and shipping them to Cuba to provide beef for Cuba. So this became a very lucrative job, rounding up these. And these guys used these whips, these long whips, and they would crack them over the animal's ears. So you hear this cracking sound. So this term also became a meaning of cracker. Someone who rounds up cows using these whips, making this sound. Well, there were black men who did this. There were black cowboys in Florida. Some of them were very, very accomplished. I was one of them who was known for being able to take a coin out of someone's lips
With his whip?
at full gallop. The brother was good. He could take. These guys got very, very precise with these whips. Because they had to flick them right over the cow's ear,
Right.
to keep them moving. So you had to get very, very proficient at that.
Okay, so a cracker is not someone who's just out there cracking a whip. You got to have a certain expertise in order to really be called. Otherwise, you're just out there like me whipping, right?
Well, but the point, anybody who was driving cattle using whips, and Florida crackers use whips and dogs. In the West, they use lassos. Florida crackers did not use lassos. They use these whips and dogs. Their cows. So if you have black men doing the same work as these white cowboys are doing, cracking, so are they black crackers?
Okay, wait, back up. Now, where did all of these black men come from now? Are you talking about freedmen who migrated to Florida back during that time?
This was going on before the Civil War.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, Florida was the only Confederate state that emerged from the Civil War unscathed economically because of these cows. It was Florida beef, these scrub cows that fed the Confederate Army out of Florida. So, and this work attracted black men even before the Civil War. Okay. So you had these black men working in Florida as cowboys, as crackers. Mm-hmm. So I raised the question, were there black crackers? And apparently there were.
Now, I know the rosewood story to a certain extent. I know what the rosewood trees were used for. I know that after the trees were pretty much used up, that the white folks left that. There was no more money in it, so the black town developed. A lot of blacks lived there. Now, you've got black cowboys in Florida. Where exactly are these black cowboys? Are they up in Pensacola, or are you talking about Jacksonville
Central Florida? All that area, the villages I used to live, all that wide open space in Florida, that was cow country. Where Disney World is now, that was cow country. And black men came in from some of them were enslaved, so they were owned by white men who had a business driving these cattle. But even after the Civil War, you had black men, free men, working in Florida in the cattle business, driving cattle.
And they were called.
They were black crackers.
Black crackers.
I don't know that they were called that at the time. I'm just saying. Given my definition of how that word evolved, then you have to apply it to black men who do the same thing as white men.
Okay, so if being able to crack your whip to drive your cattle was the reason that they were called crackers. How did it become a negative thing?
It isn't a negative thing. I have friends in Rosewood who are proud to call themselves crackers. That's a negative thing in the minds of black people. White people in Florida, and going around that I do in Florida, all these small towns and what have you, people are proud to be called crackers.
Now, wait a minute.
I had 3 of my neighbors call me, invite me to their house in Rosewood, 3 white men. And they were proudly self-proclaimed crackers. They told me, we're crackers and proud of it. And y'all think all crackers are racist and hate black people? You're wrong. We are a culture. Our definition of cracker is
I would guarantee you that the average black person, and I would probably throw in the average white person, would not know that being called a cracker is not something that is disparaging or something.
No. My very good friend Janice Owens, look her up. She's a writer. She lives in Florida. She's a cracker. She did a book on cracker cooking. I've been in her house.
But how? Wait a minute. Let's get. How long have you known that the term cracker is not a negative thing? Now I know that your friend Janice just explained this or wherever she did. So I'm going back to your own experience, and then we will relate that to the black population and white at large. When did you realize, or when were you informed that the term cracker was not something negative?
That day in Rosewood, on my neighbor's porch, talking probably 2005 or so, and then he invited me over with 2 or 3 of his friends, and they were talking about being crackers and being proud of it. And they were trying to make the point that everybody thinks that all crackers are racist and Klan members and all that, and they were trying to make the point that they're not, and they resent being identified as racist and violent people because they are self-proclaimed crackers.
Well, as people like you find out things like this, and we're talking particularly about a cracker, the term cracker right now, how do we get that out to the broader population of Americans, or those millions and millions who think that being called a cracker is something negative?
Well, we try to produce shows like this. Most folks are not going to go to the backwoods of Levy County or Jefferson, where I've gone. Mm-hmm. But once you, and let's be clear, a lot of violence came out of crackers in Florida. Mm-hmm. A lot of hateful violence came from that culture. That has to be recognized.
Yeah.
But also the fact that it is a culture. It has its own cultural milieu and makeup.
And you see, that's the difference, I think, in the average person not knowing. See, I would just relate the word cracker as a negative term that you call a white person. What you're adding that makes sense is you're adding that it's not just a term, it's a culture.
It's a culture.
See, when you say there's a culture behind it, and then you explain how that culture developed.
Exactly. And I'll tell you something, African American culture in the South is not all that different from the cracker culture. We eat the same foods, the exact same foods. Janice cooks the food that our mother cooked. Same living style, the same furniture, because we're Southerners. So there's not an African American in Florida in terms of his culture, her culture, is culturally closer to a cracker in Florida than to a Haitian.
Okay, but I think the parting line is, I understand the culture, I understand the cows, I understand the skill with the whip, but when it comes to blacks and whites, is that culture accepting of blacks having equal opportunities as them? I think, in my opinion, that's where it starts to break down. I understand the culture, but I think that given the communities that you're talking about, very rural Florida communities, if you walk in there and you are black and you think that you're going to buy the house next door and that your kids are going to grow up buddy playing together, going to school together, I think you got a rude awakening.
You think I need a rude awakening about our white cracker culture?
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about the average person. Since we're introducing the cultural aspect to cracker, which I did not know. Now I'm the one.
An average person will never meet a cracker. The average person will not meet a person in some rural area of Florida or whatever who says, "Yeah, we're crackers and we're proud of it, and here's why, and here's our culture." No, we don't hate black people.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, the guys that I saw that met that day in Rosewood on my friend's front porch told me, we're not racist. Now, do you believe in Jesus Christ? Now, you believe in Jesus Christ, you're okay with us. And to them, that was the standard.
Wait a minute.
Christian.
Are these the guys during your earlier days and owning that property, the guys that invited you to come on over for a beer and a fish fry or something?
Yeah, my neighbor, I was on my property one morning. This guy, this is not the same neighbor, different guy, rolls up in his truck and has a gun rack in the back.
Mm-hmm.
And, what are you doing out here? Almost the same scenario as earlier. I said, well, I own this land here. And he said, you own that land? I said, yes. He said, oh, well, we take care of each other out here. Come by the house tomorrow. I'm having some friends over. I'm looking at him in shock. Okay, so this was I guess it must have been Friday because it's Saturday morning. He said, come over around 11, and I did. And by the time when I got there at 11 o'clock, they were 3 sheets to the wind drunk.
Okay,
and that's when they wanted to tell me the white side of Rosewood, that their relatives, their ancestors had protected black people, and some of them did. That they had hid them in their homes. That they had. Well, one man said my uncle had a shotgun standing outside the black quarters, the black area, and dared the mob to come in. Why don't y'all talk about that? Why don't y'all give credit to the folks who did? And to an extent, they're right. You know, all these places I went to, there were always a few white folks who did the right thing. But the point is, there were just a few of them. Most people just stayed silent. So the violence was able to perpetuate itself.
Bro, every time we do a show, I learn something. And I got to give it to you. I don't always agree with what I learn. I don't always fully accept what I learn, but I always learn something. I got to give it to you. This is one of those times when I really learned something about crackers, because I thought that Red Fox and all those comedians, whoever they were back in the day, when they were telling their jokes and they were saying, and those crackers, we laughed because we thought that they were calling them some names just like they would call us the N-word. Yeah. Today in this program, I learned something, and I thank you for that.
All right, that's why we do this.
Okay. We'll do another program. I'll learn something else, but for today, that's a wrap.